Welcome back to the Gut Girls podcast. This is where we talk about real gut health, functional healing, and what it truly means to be well from the inside out. And today's episode hits home for so many of our listeners and really was a part of my journey when I was pregnant. And a lot of times we don't hear a whole lot about what happens to your gut during pregnancy. But really, pregnancy changes everything, doesn't it? No one really explains what's going on inside the gut, how to support it. And so a lot of times we hear from our clients and our listeners that people say, my digestion was perfect before I got pregnant. Like, what in the world happened?
Yeah, so this is such a hot topic, I feel like, and so close to my heart. But the gut goes through a massive transformation. Diana, like you said, your story kind of speaks to this testimony, and we hear this from so many women. And we just want to remind you today, it's not broken. Your body is simply adapting really for the benefit of you and the baby. So today we're going to break down some of those hot topic questions we get, like what happens to your gut and microbiome during pregnancy. But we're also going to take it to even postpartum and the common digestive symptoms that people get, what they actually mean, and how to support this in real life time with applicable steps and what we see on the GI map.
Yeah, so, usually you kind of give us the science behind it. So let's start from there, start from the top. Explain to us what is actually going on inside the gut when you become pregnant.
I think it's fascinating. So your gut microbiome, you've heard us say the word like ecosystem. Okay, so the ecosystem of bacteria, it completely reorganizes itself. It's amazing. So research shows that the gut actually becomes more efficient, let's say at harvesting nutrients, and that makes sense, right? Because you're growing a baby. And so that also supports the immune tolerance of the baby. So we see like this natural decrease, if you guys have looked at the GI map before, in the commensal bacteria. So it's a decrease in the bacterial diversity, and it's actually an increase in certain bacteria that help with metabolism. So at the same time, this is what you guys are all familiar with, the hormonal shift, right? We are all well familiar with what happens. We feel it as women, but the progesterone, as it increases, it actually slows down your motility. So what does that mean? That means that food is going to move through the intestine at a much slower pace. And then relaxin, that's that relaxing hormone. It loosens your smooth muscle. And so what that does is it affects digestion and elimination. So what feels like a very sluggish metabolism, I've had women say everything just feels very sluggish. It's actually your body's way of absorbing more nutrients because now you're feeding two.
Yeah, so that makes sense. When we have a pregnant client or, a friend or whatever, and they're like, hey, I am so bloated. I'm so backed up. My digestion was fine. And now it's actually their gut just kind of adapting, right? It's just trying to kind of figure out, it's a slower pace, but really to support the body for pregnancy and to support the baby. And so I want to talk about what this looks like. Let's do the real life talk. Let's talk about constipation, because we hear constipation, hemorrhoids, reflux. Oh my gosh, reflux. Do we hear that all the time? Not just obviously in pregnancy but for everybody. And then we hear about bloating. I mean, just this feeling of kind of, not feeling like things are moving well. And that's actually what's going on a little bit. So tell us about kind of what this looks like in real life for, clients that you've worked with before. I would love for you to kind of give us an idea of what that looks like for our listeners.
Yeah. So, like you said, I think constipation is the big one, but, even just listening to you describe what we hear a lot, it sounds like, oh gosh, this sounds awful in a way. And so I'm hoping the biggest takeaway that y'all get from today is it's actually beautiful, and we want to change your perspective on how to look at it. So, okay, constipation, like you said, is the big one. And we mentioned progesterone, so I'm going to go back for a second and revisit that. So progesterone slows down muscular contractions, okay? So what that means is your stool is actually going to sit longer in the intestine. There's like this wave of digestion, we call it peristalsis, that takes place. It's literally like, think of a wave where it's opening up and compressing and opening up and compressing. Guys, that's literally how your stool moves through the GI tract. So if your muscle contractions are slower, that's not happening, but there's a reason. And then if you add on to that iron supplementation, which most women get put on in their pregnancy, less movement because the body is just, it's harder to move, as you guys know that have experienced this in pregnancy. And then think dehydration on top of that, because staying hydrated is one thing. Diana, you and I know that most people have a hard time staying hydrated even outside of pregnancy. So then you add on the stressors of pregnancy on the body, and women need to be on top of hydration so much. So if we've got this combination of progesterone, iron supplementation, which slows down digestion, you've got less movement, and dehydration, it is like the perfect storm for things to get backed up very quickly. Okay, and then reflux, as you mentioned, which is another hot topic, is think of like the uterus, the big growths that happen in pregnancy. The uterus grows, it pushes up on the stomach. You combine that with slower emptying and softer muscles, which we just talked about from the progesterone. Now you have the bloating and gas that comes from both of that, the slower motility, and the microbiome shifts that change in how you actually ferment food.
I mean, this is so fascinating, and I can't help but really think about the mom out there listening who is like, man, everything was fine before, then I got pregnant, and my digestion just fell apart. And this is my story too, because, you probably don't remember, but I remember very well that my digestion seemed perfectly fine. Then I had a baby in 2010. Then I had turned around and had another baby 17 months later. And that's really when constipation started so much for me. And that's what was the cascade of effects over the next several years until I met you and I started understanding this. So it's interesting when you're talking, I'm actually replaying everything that kind of happened in my life. And of course, that's over 15 years ago when I was pregnant. But now to understand kind of the science behind it and actually what was going on, I really would love for you to kind of give our listeners, you already kind of touched upon those things, but if they're going to grab a pen and paper right now, this is the time to do that, because I want you to kind of give them some steps. Go back to when I was pregnant and you remember all of those things that I kind of talked to you about, and give me some real life things that I could do while I'm pregnant.
So when you're taking notes, as Diana said, I want you to write at the top of your notes of your journal, even before we dive into the bullet points, like applicable steps, I want you to write down food and rhythm make a huge difference, because it's consistency and it's finding rhythm in this new season of life. It's not that your body's broken, and this is not necessarily just the new you. I say that in quotations. So write that down, circle food and circle rhythm, and then let's dive into the food. So fiber and hydration are the most, I would say, important, and they go together. You cannot have enough fiber and lack hydration. Like, you have to stay hydrated when you're adding fiber into your diet. So think about adding in 25 to 30 grams of fiber in your daily routine. That could be split up throughout the day, of course. And I want you to think of gentle fibers like chia seeds. You could do chia seed pudding if you don't know how to use chia seeds. Think of those resistant starches like cooked and cooled sweet potatoes and rice. Think of lentils and cooked vegetables. Instead of going back to maybe like a raw diet that you're used to, or if you were on one, think of cooked vegetables, okay? And then we'll jump to bitters. So that will be the next category. So I love bitters because I think they're so easy. But those would be things like lemon, ginger, dandelion root. I even think of arugula. Arugula is an easy one because you can throw that in a salad. You can throw that on a sandwich. You could actually throw it in a smoothie and cover it up with some fresh berries if you want to cover up the taste. But if you're not familiar with bitters, you can also do tea. Think of ginger tea. Think of dandelion root tea. These are amazing and can be used as needed throughout the day, just to enhance digestion. The other one, Diane and I talk so much about protein. So remember your protein balance. Eat protein with each meal. That's going to help stabilize your blood sugar, and it also helps reduce nausea. So this is, I'm especially speaking to those women that are pregnant right now. Definitely make sure you're getting your protein in. You'll actually notice that if you are on top of your protein, the nausea gets less. A lot of women in pregnancy go to protein after they've gotten nauseous, and it's like you're just a minute too late. You actually want to make sure you're eating your protein, even if you're not hungry. Don't force a huge meal, but just get a snack in with some protein dense, nutrition to it, and it will help with the nausea. And then lastly, I like to talk about those fermented foods. Keep them small. If you can tolerate them, think of like a tablespoon of like kefir or sauerkraut, or even yogurt. Have yourself like a half a cup of yogurt, and that's great because you can add some of those flax seeds and chia seeds on top of that. So these are like real applicable steps that y'all can take. Okay, and then I want to go into some of the lifestyle choices. I told you we had so much to talk about. So when it's lifestyle, think about gentle movement. You guys just heard us talk about how progesterone slows down the digestive system. One of the easiest ways to actually bring that like wave of digestion back is to move. As you're walking, stretching, or even think of prenatal Pilates. We love Pilates at this stage of life because it's gentle and it's very, it's easy to recover from. So if you're feeling stressed in your pregnancy, go to Pilates. That's going to help the digestive state. I think of the nervous system support. So this is another category where you can write down your breath work, journaling, and real rest. Diana and I were just talking about real rest before we started recording this podcast today. So actually listening to your body, taking rest when you just feel like you can't go anymore. That stress directly impacts digestion. So if you can be on top of it, that will definitely help so much with your overall digestion. And then lastly, the meal rhythm. Guys, eat smaller, more frequent meals instead of larger meals or in skipping meals altogether, because then your digestion won't be overloaded and you're still getting the nutrients you need for this proper digestive state to happen.
And this is absolutely awesome because I can't help but kind of rewind and think about my mint chocolate chip ice cream that I had almost every single night when I was pregnant. And I wondered why, I would try to run to the saltines and Sprite. And I'm like, that was not serving me well. I guarantee you I was not eating. I mean, honestly, I can't even imagine me eating 30 grams of protein in a day. I mean, I probably was so undernourished and just not eating the right things. I was going to bed at weird times, waking up. I mean, I felt horrible. I did not have a good pregnancy. It wasn't a horrible pregnancy, but I just didn't feel great. And so I wish that I had some of these tools and things during that stage of life for me. I think I would have felt a lot better during that time. So if you're listening and that's something that you're considering doing, you're a new mom, you want to become a mom, I highly recommend that you rewind this and go back and write down those things that Angela said, because I wish that I could go back in time and do that a little bit differently. With this, it's not necessarily about fixing the gut during pregnancy. It's just about really supporting the body during the transition. And it's interesting that a lot of these things are similar to the things that we talked about before in our basics guide. It's not that dissimilar for pregnancy than it is for just your everyday person that's not going through pregnancy. It's still about the rhythm. It's about the lifestyle. It's about chewing slowly, sitting up straight, trying not to multitask, so many different things that you mentioned with the movement and things. So that is so interesting to me. And again, I wish that I could have done some of those things during my time. But what also is really interesting is where you talked about the GI map. And I know there's some people that are listening that they really like kind of the science behind it. What is actually going on during pregnancy, and actually postpartum, and how does that affect the GI map? What does that look like? So I would love for you to kind of walk us through some of those, the more science behind it in that GI map test.
Yeah, I love the GI maps. We've seen them on all stages, pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and postpartum. It's actually one of the fascinating tests because you can do it during pregnancy, right? We don't do a lot of testing on moms during pregnancy for so many reasons, but this one is so effective, and non-invasive. It's just a stool sample. And so we get to actually follow the mom her whole pregnancy, which is amazing. So pre-pregnancy, if you are really focused and intentional on your health, you typically will see someone come in with strong digestive markers. So that would be like their elastase is, 750 to 1,000. That's kind of optimal. We're not finding a lot of fat in their stool. So that shows, hey, they're digesting the food that they're eating, right? You also see a very diverse, good bacteria profile. So guys, the more diverse your bacteria is, the healthier you are. It actually speaks to even better longevity. So we typically see that in a healthy mom, and then we see really a stable immune markers. So we don't see like a high inflammation. We don't see their immune system overreacting. That's a healthy individual, right? We do have some moms that are coming into this, unhealthy. They recognize that and they want to get healthy before pregnancy, which is what we encourage you to do. And then when we dive into pregnancy, it's amazing to me the shift that you see in pregnancy. And again, it looks negative, but it's actually not. It's to support the baby. So you see a more like energy harvesting state. So what that means is your stool test actually looks like someone who's going into or is in like a metabolic state. So guys, if you don't know what that means, that's like, think of diabetes, right? Think of someone who's holding on to a lot of fat. That's a metabolic insufficiency. But we actually see that in pregnancy. And here's why. Because if we can actually store more fat, the baby gets so much more in the end, right? Those healthy fats that feed the health of the hormones, that feed the makeup of, the lining of the uterus and the placenta, all the healthy fat. It's so needed. So the body does this for your baby, which is amazing. We also see, though, the immune system in pregnancy shift, where it actually runs a little bit higher. And that you might be like, oh, that seems odd. Why would it do that? But it's actually because when you're in pregnancy and the immune system kind of shifts into this higher state, it's bringing more vascular changes. Think of how much blood vessel dilation we need in pregnancy to bring nutrients and blood to the baby. If your immune system didn't react that way, you actually wouldn't have all of those benefits to the baby. So even though this seems like, bad news, it's actually not. It's amazing for the baby. And then what we see postpartum, if done correctly, is the reset phase. So this is where Diana and I do a lot of our coaching, because a lot of people, this is where they get stuck. Diana, this was you. When you were postpartum, you're like, I'm stuck here. Like my body's stuck in constipation. I'm stuck in this metabolic like state, and I don't know what to do to get out of it. So this is where we coach you to really understand the body. So here, postpartum, we see elastase actually drop down. So that's your digestive marker for the capacity to digest your nutrients. We actually see at postpartum drop, and we see steatocrit rise above 10, which is your ability to digest fats. Okay, so it looks like on the GI map immediately postpartum, hey, you're not digesting at all. In fact, Dana, I think I remember saying that to you. I was like, hey, you're really not digesting what you're eating at all right now. We also see calprotectin, like I told you, that immune system spikes. So we can see the inflammatory marker on the GI map get higher. It can spike. And that's from gut lining stress, and that's from birth recovery, right? I mean, your body just went through a whole experience. Like, of course, there's going to be inflammation. If there wasn't, the tissues wouldn't heal that were stressed postpartum, right? Even if someone tears during their, let's say they do have a vaginal birth and there's lots of tearing, in order for all that to heal, guys, you have to to see this spike in your immune system. So it's actually to your benefit, but we do need to work on transitioning you out of that. And then sometimes postpartum, we see things like yeast. A lot of women experience yeast postpartum. Yeast will definitely happen when the digestive system slows down. It is so proven. And if there's a trauma postpartum, or I should say at the birth, where you do have to be put on a lot of antibiotics, it happens, guys, and it's okay. It's just knowledge is powerful, because when you come out of that state and you're loaded with yeast, now you understand why. But more so, having a good coach can help you even work through that trauma a little bit and recover from what your body has gone through. But we see things like yeast, and we see things like H. pylori. So I'll kind of stop here, but I want to say, Diana, that H. pylori that you talked about, where you said it more as reflux and indigestion and heartburn, because that's what they feel. They don't actually know that could be H. pylori. But remember, guys, H. pylori is a bacteria that we test for on the GI map, and it is a stress bug. So pregnancy is a stress. Diana actually hit the nail on the head when she said this is not just for pregnancy, this is for everybody, because we all go through stress. And under stress, that's when we'll see this ratio of good to overgrowth bacteria, get off, and that's when we see H. pylori. And then those are the reflux, the bloating that sticks around even 6 months postpartum. And people are like, oh, I guess this is just the new me. And it's like, no, there's a lot that your body is still trying to just transition out of.
I mean, all of this is fascinating, obviously. And this is one thing that I know, like you said, is so dear to you because you work with a lot of pregnancy. And this is where coaching makes such a big difference. I wish that I would have had you to coach me through this. And, it's interesting. You can't really supplement, let's hop into the supplement talk a little bit, because, obviously it's to supplement a healthy lifestyle. It is not necessarily going to be the tool that just flips the switch for you. So I would encourage you, if you feel like, okay, I'm taking a prenatal vitamin, check your prenatal vitamin. What does that look like? Are you actually, you can Google it, whatever you want to do, make sure, reach out to us and make sure that those ingredients in there and the nutrients in there are actually in a methylated form so your body can absorb them really well. But the supplement is really not the huge picture here. It's really what we're looking at is this rhythm that you're talking about. The supplement isn't the solution. And so when we look at that GI map test, that's when, for postpartum, that's when the body is telling us a little bit about where the inflammation is coming from. And it kind of gives us a little bit of a roadmap, right? It's not a supplement list, it's a roadmap. And we can look at the digestion, the microbiome, all of that, and look at kind of what it's going to take to rebuild that, right? And so what I really want you to kind of, when we go back and ask that question, if there's a mom that she's nauseous all the time, she's not feeling her best, she doesn't understand what her body may need right now, and she's asking the question, what is wrong with me? Help her to understand, what are some of those quick takeaways for her to be like, okay, this is what's going on with my body, and here's how I can make some really simple habits and lifestyle changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear a lot of moms say, I just don't feel settled. That's a term I'll get postpartum. Or I can't believe that I'm still having symptoms this long postpartum. And so, guys, when you're doing the GI map, we honestly recommend do a GI map. I remember doing even my own, and I was blown away because I was like, oh, but I did all the things right because I'm in the field. I really know what to do. But here's the thing, guys. You can't outrun stress. So like Diana just said, I want to remind you, like even my postpartum GI map, I remember being like, wow. And so it's really not about like, oh, I took all the supplements, I did all the things. It's just understanding and having grace for like, my body just did a big thing. Think about like running a marathon, right? Do you expect, even if you're the top athlete in the world, to run your labs immediately after crossing that finish line and for everything to look picture perfect. No, even the best athletes, it won't, but they know what to do to get it back into check. So what we get to do is when we see that GI map, we get to show the mom, we get to validate her and be like, here is where inflammation is coming from. The stool test does not lie. It actually tells your story, right? So it tells the story internally what's going on, which, guys, we disconnect what's happening so much internally that when I ask a mom how she's doing postpartum and she's like, I'm just fine. And then I run her stool test and I'm like, but you're not. It's a great moment for her to be like, okay, like, this is a safe place where I can actually be like, you're right, I'm not okay. And that space is what we provide you. So we get to show you where the inflammation is coming from. We get to ask you those questions of like, hey, are you skipping meals? I know I did postpartum. I was trying to take care of babies and, keep the house from looking a disastrous mess and all the things that we think we have to keep up with. But then, hey, like, how's your sleep right now? You're nursing a baby or you're up all night with a baby, feeding it a bottle, whatever you're doing, whatever, your decisions are. How is that sleep? And it's an honest conversation, right, Diana, where it's like, you're right. I'm really not sleeping well. I'm actually skipping meals. I'm trying to just survive. And that's where we get to meet you where you're at and be like, we know. We were there. We know. And it's okay. So then we get to tell them, here are the daily patterns based on these results that if you are consistent with these, you will come out on the other side. And we keep it simple. Like, hey, maybe you didn't know that you needed an electrolyte right now. And what time of the day would that be best for you? Let's get that let's get that written down so you don't forget that. What about just the meal rhythms? Maybe you have multiple kids at home and you're like, man, I can't cook 5 meals a day. We just had a mom on our group coaching call the other day. Same, she was like, how do y'all do this? By the end of that call, she felt so confident and ready to get these meals prepared because we told her how to do it. We're like, this is how we do it. These are busy moms getting it done, and this is what will work for you right now. And she felt so empowered. We get to do that for you. And then the mental shifts of when you see this GI map, it's the shift of like, okay, I don't have to bounce back right away, which is what our culture tells us. I get to redefine what my postpartum journey looks like. And I mean, I have goosebumps just saying that. Like the fact that you get to redefine what your postpartum looks like and not what the world says your postpartum looks like, that's a huge gift in itself. So we get to learn how to nourish rather than just push through. So to me, that's the funnest part of our job, right, Diana?
I love that so much. And again, I would love to have had you kind of walk alongside me and do this in a community. And I think that's what's so cool about what we've kind of built here with Gut Girls is that missing piece that I feel like I didn't have, where I just felt very lonely. I felt like I was, I thought, again, I was 5 years postpartum, right? And still having so many issues that changed during pregnancy, and I didn't understand it. And so I really wish that I would have had the GI map to help create that roadmap for me and really have the support and the community surrounding me during that time. And so if you're pregnant, if you're postpartum, if you're planning for either, if you know somebody that is, you can tell them, say that's your unique gut story, and you can heal, and we're here to be a part of that. So if you're listening and you're like, man, I really love what they're saying, this is something that I'm planning for, I want to go ahead and prepare my body for that, or I've already had a baby and maybe it's been 10 years, maybe it's been 30 years, we're still here for you no matter what. And so the best way to get started with us is to go to our website, gutgirls.health. We'll do a free 15 discovery call and just kind of chat with you. There's no obligation or anything. Just kind of chat with you, see where you might fit into our program. And one thing that I love about what you said a minute ago about one of those coaching calls, that is one of the things that I'm beginning to look forward to every week in our membership is those coaching calls. Because just like you talked about with that mom, I put myself in her shoes and I was like, man, she's trying to make these changes and she's kind of feeling a little overwhelmed, and we could provide her, we talked about it on the call, but then there's also written out resources for her that we've talked about, batch cooking, and I mean, just so much. We have poured into the resource part of our business to make sure that you don't feel alone, that you feel supported during this time. So if you want to, again, be a part of this community with us, get started by going to our website.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see you guys next time on the Gut Girls podcast, where healing starts from the inside out.
The Gut Girls podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. We are not acting as licensed medical professionals. Always consult your doctor before making any changes to your health routine.